Wait a minute, that's not right. New royalty is crowned. We have a vengeful new champion, and poor Otis can't seem to do anything right. Plus, we have to ask, what was everybody thinking at King and Queen in the Ring? Okay, in the news. In the news, indeed, we have so many matches this week, so we'll try to go through them quickly. Let's start with SmackDown. We had a 6-man tag match between LA Knight and the Street Profits taking on Carmelo Hayes and A-Town Down Under. We almost had a finish when Knight hit a BFT on Waller, and then Ford had a big splash to get the pin. This was the first match for both groups, so we don't expect this to be anything significant going forward, but I do want to note that Carmelo Hayes is now 1-5-1 in all matches on the main roster. Then we had Bayley taking on Chelsea Green in a non-title match. Chelsea looked really good, really strong, the best she's looked in a long time, and she even hit a Rough Rider on Bayley, but she messed up by going for it a second time when Bayley was able to hit a powerbomb off of the Rough Rider and then a Rose Plant to get the win, having Bayley go to 5-1-1 in all singles matches this year, while Chelsea drops to 0-6 in all singles matches. Beyond the mat for SmackDown, first DIY said they'll do anything to get those tag titles, so if they have to go through the Street Profits, they will do it. And they showed they mean business when Ciampa dumped Ford's drink onto the floor. Then AJ Styles went into Nick Aldis's office to ask for one more title shot, but Aldis says he can't just hand out those opportunities, so we'll have to see what's next for AJ. Lastly, Paul Heyman pulled Solo Sikoa aside and said that both Tonga and Loa are dangerous men, and that's why Reigns did not let them into the bloodline earlier. And speaking of Tonga, let's go right to the King of the Ring semifinals between Tonga and Randy Orton. Tonga showed how dangerous he was getting off to a fast start, but once Orton got him out of the ring and delivered a couple cheap eye pokes and then 2 sideways slams onto the announce tables, he was able to turn the tide in his advantage. Shortly after, Sikoa tried to distract Orton by getting up on the apron, but Orton knocked him right back off and delivered an RKO on Tonga to get the win, sending him to the finals to take on Gunther. For Tonga, this was his first loss on the main roster, falling to 2-1. Speaking of that finals match, at King and Queen of the Ring, we had the King of the Ring finals between Orton and Gunther. This is our match of the week, and it was an electric atmosphere in Saudi Arabia. Both competitors felt each other out for several minutes before they really got into it. But Gunther quickly tweaked Orton's back and then started to grind him down. After several minutes, Gunther landed a splash, but not before he almost toppled over and fell onto the floor from it. So maybe he was not quite happy with himself for that effort, so he tried it a second time, but Orton was ready for it and he instead delivered his first RKO of the night. Once the competitors were outside the ring, Orton yet again delivered 3 sideways slams onto both of the announce tables. Gunther, however, started to work on Orton's left knee that had been hurt, including locking in a painful half crab. However, after several minutes, Orton landed an RKO out of nowhere that we thought was going to get him the win. But when he went for the pin, Gunther had enough left in him to hit Orton's knee, allowing Gunther to roll up Orton and get a 1-2-3 count, but it was easily shown that Orton's right knee was off the mat and therefore the ref should not have counted it. However, the ruling stood and Gunther became your King of the Ring. He is now 5-0 since WrestleMania, and he will get a title shot for the World Heavyweight Championship at SummerSlam. For Orton, that was his first loss in one-on-one action since returning, but he's still a very impressive 7-1. For the Queen of the Ring, first on SmackDown, Bianca Belair took on Nia Jax. Both of them showed their strength early, but Bianca's left knee was still too hurt from the prior weeks. And she tried 2 KODs, but could not just get Nia up for the finishing move, costing her an annihilator that got Nia the win, sending her to the finals. For Bianca, this was her first one-on-one loss since November, but she's still 5-1 in 2024. And then in the finals, Nia took on Lyra Valkyria from Raw, and Lyra proved to be very slippery and annoying to Nia early on, including trying a couple sleeper holds, but that eventually just got Nia angrier as she quickly overpowered her and dominated most of the rest of the match. Lyra did, however, try a sunset powerbomb off of the turnbuckle, but she just could not get Nia off, and it led to the most devastating annihilator of all time, which got Queen Nia the win. Nia, with her 4 wins in the tournament, now has upped her record to 7-3, and she will also get a title shot at SummerSlam. For Lyra, a very impressive start to her main roster career, but that's her first loss, and she is now 3-1. For the other matches at King and Queen of the Ring, we first had a kickoff show match featuring Bianca and Jade taking on Indy Hartwell and Candice LeRae for the Women's Tag Team Championships. Indy and Candice had a good game plan to attack Bianca's injured left knee even more, but Bianca and Jade proved to be too powerful as they hit their new finisher, a DDT suplex combo, to get them the win. This was their first title defense, and they are 3-0 as a team. For Indy and Candice, they fall to 4-5. Then we had a really great Intercontinental Triple Threat title match between Sami Zayn, Chad Gable, and Big Bronson Reed. So many highlights here, but we'll just quickly note we had Reed trying a moonsault that didn't work, that ended up in which he got moonsaulted by Gable. We had a double ankle lock by both Gable and Zayn at the same time. We had a double stacked Samoan drop, and we had a double stacked German suplex. But yet again, this one came down to Otis of all people. First, Gable told him to clothesline Reed at ringside, and so he had no problems doing that. But then he had Zayn thrown out of the ring and told him to do the same to him. Otis hesitated once, clotheslining Zayn, and for that he got reprimanded by Gable. So Gable held up Zayn a second time, and this time Otis was going through with it, but Zayn got out of the way at the last second and he clotheslined Gable instead. Immediately, Zayn went into the ring and gave a haluva kick to Reed to get the win. For Zayn, this is his third defense since gaining the title at WrestleMania, and he has won 9 of his last 11 singles matches. For Gable, this ends his brief 2-match winning streak, and he is now 3-4 in singles matches, while Reed has now dropped 4 out of his last 5. Our next title match was for the WWE Championship between Cody Rhodes and Logan Paul. Paul, per usual, pulled out all the stops to try to win this one. But it was first Rhodes who should have been disqualified when he hit Paul with Paul's own Prime bottle. However, the ref let that go, and then one of Paul's friends pushed Rhodes, which again could have been a disqualification, this time in favor of Rhodes. However, the ref let that one go, and then Rhodes inexplicably and surprisingly threw that friend over the barricade and into ringside, which allowed Paul to have another one of his buddies hand him a new pair of brass knuckles that he used to hit Rhodes in the ribs. Match, however, still continued as the ref didn't see that either. Later, Rhodes was able to land a Cody cutter on Paul on the table, but just as Rhodes would have won by countout, he told the referee to stop counting, allowing the match to continue. However, this really backfired as Paul was able to land a frog splash off of the top rope and onto the Arabic announce table. Minutes later, both men accidentally knocked into and knocked out the ref, which allowed Paul to hit a low blow on Rhodes. However, just as he was going for another shot with the brass knuckles, the guest ring announcer grabbed Paul's legs and prevented him from using them. That led right into Rhodes hitting 3 straight crossroads to get the win and retain the title. For Cody, that is his second successful title defense, and he is now 8-1 in singles matches. For Paul, this stops his 4-match winning streak dating back to August of 2023. Lastly, we had Becky Lynch trying to retain her title against Liv Morgan for the Women's World Championship. This was a pretty even match throughout all of it, with Liv Morgan surprisingly trying 2 different submission holds. However, it came down to the end when Dominic Mysterio showed up unannounced and tried to help Becky by throwing a chair into the ring, telling her to use it on Liv. When Dom distracted the ref, it was Liv who benefited when she hit a DDT onto the chair and then hit an Oblivion to get the win and become the new Women's World Champion. Becky was not very happy about Dom's interference, and so she demanded a rematch on Raw. So they set up a steel cage match for this rematch, hoping that Dominic would not be able to interfere this time. And this was a really great steel cage match where both competitors used the cage very effectively to inflict damage upon their opponents, including when Becky had a disarmor locked on through the middle rope. Liv was able to use her other hand and slam Becky's head into the cage. Dom, however, still managed to make an appearance, and he opened the cage door and told Becky to make her way out. However, Braun Strowman was chasing JD McDonough all night, and he accidentally slammed into Dom, causing the door to close and hit Becky while she was trying to leave the ring. This gave Liv her opening, and she crawled out of the cage to retain the title. After these 2 wins, Liv has surprisingly flipped the script completely, as she is now 4-3 in one-on-one matches, while Becky falls under 500 to 4-5. Why was Strowman chasing JD all night? Well, they opened the show with a first match. It was Strowman's first match in over a year, but he did not look very rusty as he dominated JD early on. However, McDonough was able to work on Strowman's knee, causing Strowman to be hobbled all night. But Strowman was just too powerful as he showed off a modified new finisher, turning his former power slam into a tilt-a-whirl power slam to get the win. As mentioned, it was his first match in over a year, so he is 1-0 this year. For McDonough, he leads all of WWE with 18 televised matches, but he's nowhere close to leading in wins, as he is now 1-7 in singles matches. Next, we had Ricochet get cleared by the doctor earlier in the afternoon, so he wanted to face Braun Breaker to get revenge on him from last week. However, Adam Pearce told Ricochet that he had been fined and suspended. Maybe Pearce is actually listening to our STFs. So, because of that, Ricochet then challenged Dragunov to a rematch from their first round King of the Ring match. Ricochet, however, was still favoring his ribs during the match, but was able to manage to hit a recoil that looked to set him up for a possible win when Braun Breaker came out of the crowd and speared Ricochet, getting Ricochet a disqualification win. But Dragunov didn't like this and tried to attack Breaker, but he also got speared for his troubles. With the DQ win, Ricochet goes to 4-1 in one-on-one matches, while Dragunov now has lost 2 in a row, and he is just 2-2. Then we saw the Authors of Pain take on the Creed brothers. AOP started out strong early, but when Julius tagged in, he was on fire and was about to set up a Brutus ball when Scarlett knocked Ivy into the ring post, causing the distraction and allowing AOP to hit their new What a Rush finisher for the win. AOP improves to an impressive 4-1 in traditional tag matches, but the Creed brothers dropped to 0-5 in all tags. Then we saw Kairi Sane take on Lyra Valkyria, and Lyra was still favoring her ribs from Naya's Annihilator 2 nights earlier, and Kairi took advantage of it and was about to hit the Insane Elbow for the win, but Lyra got her feet up in the time and then was able to roll up Kairi and get the pin. Lyra gets right back on track and she is 4-1, while Kairi, this was her first one-on-one action of 2024. Next, we had Rey Mysterio take on Carlito, and Michael Cole noted it was their first match in 20 years against each other. Wow. Carlito was in control most of the way, but Finn Balor had promised to help Carlito earlier, so he came out of the crowd and attacked Dragon Lee. Somehow, this allowed Mysterio to become inspired, and he was able to hit a 619 and drop the dime on Carlito to get the win. But the two sides battled after the match, but it came to a halt when Priest hit a South of Heaven chokeslam on Rey to end the segment. Rey, since he's come back, he is just 1-2 now in singles matches. For Carlito, he drops to 1-4. Lastly, we had Otis take on Big Bronson Reed, as Gable said Otis got one more chance to redeem himself after Saturday night. However, Gable yelled at Otis and stopped him from hitting a caterpillar, which gave Reed the opportunity to land a super kick, senton, and tsunami to get the win. Fortunately, after the match, both Maxine and then Sami Zayn stopped Gable from using his belt as a whip on Otis. However, once Zayn started to beat up Gable, it was Otis who pulled Zayn off of him. For the match itself, Reed improved to 3-5 as he's able to take advantage of each of these Alpha Academy members, while Otis drops to 0-4. Behind the mat, quickly, we saw Sheamus call out Kaiser after weeks of Kaiser doing the same to him. So Sheamus went backstage to find Kaiser, and Kaiser jumped him from behind, and they fought before officials had to break it up. Io Sky was not very happy with Damage Control's loss, so she decided to break everything in their locker room, so it looked like she was having a rough night for some reason. Lastly, Sonya Deville returned last week, which I forgot to mention, but she again confronted Shayna and Zoe as they try to gain the women's tag team championships. But Sonya noted that she doesn't think the locker room has any respect for them, which proved to be true just moments later as Fire and Dawn challenged them to a match. So, no time today for a question of the week, but let's go right to who's next. We had 4 championship matches at King and Queen of the Ring, so let's see who's next for each of those. First, for the Women's World Championship, we saw Liv Morgan win the title from Becky Lynch and then defend it in a steel cage match on Raw. So, who are our next top contenders? First, our number 1 contender is Lyra Valkyria. She made it to the finals of Queen of the Ring, going 3-1, and indeed even won her next match on Raw, and she is now 4-1 on the main roster. Secondly, we're still going to go with Io Sky, even despite her outrage at Raw, as she went 2-1 in Queen of the Ring and is 4-2 in singles matches in 2024. And third, we will still give it to Becky Lynch even with those 2 losses, and even though she had 0 successful title defenses, she still is just hanging around 500, which on Raw for the women is really, really good. But who should not be in the title contention? Well, we're going to say it is Dakota Kai, despite Io's availability on this list. Dakota Kai is 0-2 in May and 0-4 in singles matches in 2024. So for now, she needs to be nowhere close to a title shot. Next, the Intercontinental Championship was successfully defended by Sami Zayn in a triple threat match. So who are the new top contenders? First, we're going to go with Braun Breaker. Even though he has drawn the ire of Adam Pearce, he is still 5-0 in one-on-one matches to start his main roster career, so we think he should shoot right to the top of the IC Championships. Secondly, we'll go with Ilya Dragunov, who started 2-1 on the main roster, winning a first-round match over Ricochet. He then, of course, had his rematch against Ricochet on Monday Night Raw, but lost. However, it was due to Breaker's interference, costing him a disqualification loss. So we'll still put him number 2 on this list. And third, we will go with Sheamus. He is 2-1 since returning from his injury, so we'll put him 3rd on this list, and we know he badly wants that IC title to become a Grand Slam champion. But who should not be on this list? Well, we're going to go yet again with Big Bronson Reed. After Saturday night, he was just 1-4 after WrestleMania. He did pick up a win on Monday night with a win over Otis, but after all his chances, he should be out of the picture for now. Moving on to the undisputed WWE Championship, defended by Cody Rhodes over Logan Paul at King and Queen of the Ring. Our number one contender should be Randy Orton. He is now 7-1 on the year after losing to Gunther in the King of the Ring finals. And while this does not give him an automatic shot at the title, with Gunther being on Raw for that automatic shot, Orton's record is very impressive and should earn him a shot. Secondly, we're going to go with LA Knight. He is still an impressive 5-3 in one-on-one matches. And third, we will add Tama Tonga into this list. Maybe a surprising appearance, but his 2-1 record in King of the Ring with good showings all around and only a loss to Orton gets him off to a strong start in his main roster career, so maybe the bloodline can push him for a title shot in the near future. But who should not have such a shot? Well, even though he begged for it on SmackDown, it shouldn't be AJ Styles, as he is now just 2-6-1 in singles matches in 2024. And lastly, the Women's Tag Team Championships were defended on the Countdown show prior to the start of King and Queen of the Ring, and Bianca and Jade easily took care of Indy and Candice. So who deserves this shot? Well, first, we know that they have already earned a shot. We will go with Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark. They are an incredible 7-1 in 2024. Secondly, we're going to go with Asuka and Kairi yet again. They are 5-1-1 in 2024 with their only loss to the new champions, but Asuka is out with an injury, so we don't know how much longer we can leave them on this list before they will fall away. And lastly, we will still go with Indy and Candice, as there aren't that many options in this particular division, but they have won 3 out of their last 5 matches, so perhaps they can earn their way to yet another shot. And who shouldn't it be? Well, it should be any other combination of Damage Control, but in particular, Dakota Kai and Kairi Sane. They are 0-1 in their only tag team match as a duo. So there you have it for who's next. So let's go to everyone's favorite segment, What Were You Thinking? This week on What Were You Thinking, we have a trifecta of blunders from King and Queen of the Ring, so let's knock them out one by one. First, we have Big Bronson Reed. He took a clothesline by Otis and then didn't know where he was for about forever. So here's the scene. Reed had just gotten taken to the outside after being double suplexed by Gable. Gable then tells Otis to take out Reed. So Otis has no problem with doing this. So Otis lines him up, and he comes in with a big clothesline and knocks out Reed. So what did Bronson do this whole time? Well, we're not quite sure, because right after that, we cut to Gable telling Otis to then take out Sami Zayn. Now, Otis had some trepidation at doing this, as Sami was very nice to him backstage last week after Otis apologized. So it took Otis a while to figure out what to do. He even went for the clothesline once and stopped. So Gable started yelling at him, as he always seems to do. And then finally, on a second attempt, Otis again goes for the clothesline, but this time Zayn rolls out of the way and instead hits Gable with the clothesline. Only at this point does Zayn get back into the ring. And what does the camera show? It shows that Reed is not yet back in the ring himself until after Zayn gets into the ring. So what's Bronson doing? Well, he gets into the ring and stands in the corner, setting up perfectly for Zayn to line it up in the back corner and hit his haluva kick to knock out Reed and end the match. So, Bronson Reed, what were you thinking, hanging out outside the ring and then stumbling yourself in the ring right to lose the match? Secondly, we have to go to the referee in the King of the Ring finals. Wow, what were you thinking, ref, when you kept counting? So we set the scene here. Randy Orton delivers an RKO out of nowhere on Gunther. And so Orton goes for the cover, but Here's Gunther. He has enough in him to hit Orton's knee and then rolls him up into a perfect pin, but only then the ref gets down and he correctly gets in perfect position and counts the 1, and then Gunther accidentally keeps going too far and Orton's right shoulder comes off the mat. But what does the ref do? Instead of stopping like he's supposed to, he puts down for a 2 count. And then inexplicably, but it seems like on purpose to try to put himself out of perfect position, he does a little hop to the right, but continues to count for the 3 count to give Gunther the win. Clearly, he knew for 2 whole counts that Orton's shoulder was off the mat. So, referee, what were you thinking? And lastly, we'll keep going. We're running out of breath. But, Logan Paul, what were you thinking when you let Cody Rhodes just give you a Cody cutter for no reason? Paul missed a springboard clothesline in the ring, but he just turns around and sees Cody flying off of the middle rope to try a Cody cutter. And Logan, what do? Well, instead of doing what you should do and just stand away, get out of the way, maybe punch Rhodes in the head, I don't know, anything but do what you do when you inexplicably lean yourself right into it and take the Cody cutter. Just like this. You were standing here, you just launched and took the Cody cutter for a big shot. And of course, you eventually lost the match. So, Logan Paul, what were you thinking? And finally, for our STFs of the week, first on SmackDown, Carmelo Hayes attacked LA Knight from behind as he was leaving the ring. And then Grayson Waller and Austin Theory jumped in, so all 3 of them are going to pick up a fine. Then, after the match between Chelsea and Bayley, Piper Niven stepped in and attacked Bayley, including several devastating sentons, so Piper will also pick up a fine. Lastly, after the match between Tama Tonga and Randy Orton, Solo Sikoa hit 1 Samoan spike and was setting up for a second one as Kevin Owens thankfully saved the day, so Sikoa will also pick up a fine. Then at King and Queen of the Ring, during the Logan Paul-Cody Rhodes Championship match, Paul used the brass knuckles on Knight's ribs and then followed up with a low blow. Even though these would normally be let go, they were so egregious that we have to give Paul a 1-week suspension. In the same match, Rhodes, however, after he was pushed by one of Paul's friends, he then threw the friend over the barricade, thus putting his hands on a non-employed WWE employee, so Rhodes will have to pick up a fine for laying his hands on him. Finally, on Raw, we had a bunch of activity. First, in the Braun Strowman versus JD McDonough match, we had Carlito attack Strowman during the match, and then afterwards, both Carlito and Balor attacked, but fortunately, Strowman was able to knock both of them away. However, JD McDonough grabbed a steel chair and smashed it into Strowman's back, which more than anything just angered him. However, Carlito, Balor, and McDonough all get a fine for this. Secondly, more activity here. Ray versus Carlito match, we had Balor coming out and attacking Dragon Lee at ringside. Then after the match, everybody got into a fight, but the only person that gets an additional penalty here is Damian Priest for then later coming out and landing a South of Heaven chokeslam on Ray, so for this match, both Balor and Priest are getting fines. Also, backstage, Io Sky is going to pick up a fine for destroying property in the lounge where she was watching Kyrie's match. AOP is also going to pick up a fine for their pre-match attack right before the bell on the Creed brothers that gave them an advantage during the match. Also, during the same match, Scarlett pushed Ivy Nile for no apparent reason into one of the ring posts, so AOP and Scarlett are all getting fines. Lastly, Braun Breaker was already suspended and fined for his activities last week, so when he came out of the crowd and speared Ricochet to force a disqualification and then also spearing Dragunov, he is getting an extra week tacked on to his suspension. Gunther and Nia Jax look like they will be dominating King and Queen of the Ring. Liv Morgan's revenge tour has gotten off to a rousing start, but we can only say it was a bad night at the office for WWE's referees at King and Queen of the Ring. So I'm Dr. O'Kay reporting on the WWE where everything is okay.